Good afternoon. Well, I will say a few words about the standards and norms in the internet and will tell you what is the situation, whether young people do declare that they have any rules or not. Why is it important for us all? Any educational program, whenever it appears, we adults think that we either implement such rules and somebody will start to observe, or we will strengthen the rules. So we all should be interested in learning the state of play if we have an idea to change it. And by way of introduction, Einstein said that morals is a lively phenomenon. It is not something fixed, it is changing. So the goal of our activity is not that we are embedding somebody's minds with some norms and he will have a fixed set of rules. The aim of our activities is to create a person who is critically thinking, because we're not going to foresee all the situations or the technological progress, so that could be inspiration. And Roosevelt said that if we teach somebody, not upbring him, then it will be a social threat. Well, exaggerating a little bit, I think that if we had a weight and we said education on light and upbringing and socializing matters are no longer prioritized, because it's not very deep and it is not actually done. I think there is still more questions than answers, and we should think what to do. A few questions. Can a wise man act stupid in the internet? Can we have a situation that we have a well-internalized set of norms, but they are broken in the internet? Just for the sake of your curiosity, it seems that all villains are not committing the crimes not because they are not familiar with the rules. They accept it, but they break it. In other studies of 2,000 junior high school students, I asked whether they did anything which was meant as a joke but then harmed a person. 2/3 said that that's what happened. So they did something against the rules, even though they knew the rules. So are there any rules in internet? I will show you that empirically we've done some research. The fact that somebody declares that he adheres to rules does not mean that if he is in actual situation he will observe it. And a few comments by way of conclusion. What is the consequence for the upbringing in the digital age? Should we take something into account? When we researched that, and I done some research with my team, it is part of the international study which is conducted in 6 countries. We were studying junior high school students in smaller and bigger cities. It was questionnaire-based, but we believe it was quite reasonable. So our respondents knew what we were asking about, and there was a practical intervention and as part of the project, so we were trying to do various things. First of all, the researchers of the cyber psychology, depending how one calls it, started to think whether people act in internet differently, whether they are not making bad things in internet easier, and they use the term of desuppression. And even though you operate within the world of the standards and rules, in internet they are no longer adhering to those. Somewhat it can say that it is a novelty, but it's not true, because the sociologists found out that if somebody is anonymous, he's more willing to do bad things. For example, people with paper bags on their heads, they will be doing more bad things, and you don't have to study it. For example, a reasonable person who will go to a country where he's not known, he will be easier committing things that he would normally don't do. So there are four elements behind this suppression. So somebody is invisible. Secondly, that he's anonymous. That's a slogan. I study the electronic aggression, and in most of the cases it's not anonymous, but this desuppression happens because the person feels that sure he's anonymous. Textual, being on the text, even though there are some possibilities to use some other possibilities, people prefer to use text. Many people can use Skype, but they still use the text-based communicators. So we tend to use text-based communication, and it's asynchronic nature. So all these things contribute to this desuppression phenomenon, and there is a body of studies which support it. What is the risk socially? This is a micropsychological reason why you can lose the norms and standards and rules. That I have the norms, but I don't adhere to it. Take a look at this. Probably most of you read the book by Golding, and we know that young persons, as a result of the plane catastrophe, end up on the island without adults, and they socialize themselves in a very, very brutal way, and it ends up in the tragedy. Is there such a risk in the internet? Yes, because if young persons, especially the teenagers, are doing many activities in the internet without any supervision of the role models, it is possible that there is the risk that they will socialize themselves on this island of internet. And this is what happens, because I know the groups of internet where young persons socialize themselves single-handedly, and there are some research which prove that these groups can create their own standards and rules. One says that the internet is the world without any norms. I attended recently a conference about the problems in the internet, and there was this first slide. Internet, the world without the sense, goal and purpose. This was the information for all the participants. This is not true. The beginnings of internet were better than right now. It was developed by the IT elites who were very adept at ICT technologies, and you had to be very sophisticated to use the first tools. So it was only elite using it. Only after it became more popular, and it becoming very popular, it all changed. But also at the outset, when you take a look at the history, when we saw the emergence of certain rules of the scientific institutes, then these rules were created by the groups. Then we saw the emergence of microgroups, which had a set of rules, and ethical experts are discussing what we should do about it. Do we need a new ethics? They are quarreling about it. It is interesting, but this would take a lot of time. But as a matter of fact, that the rules are on different levels. Some of them are of legal nature, that you cannot blackmail somebody on the internet because there are some penal code stipulations, but some of them are courtesy based, and some are as follows. You need to use Polish characters. When I'm talking about the standards in internet, we can have an analogy to the real world. And as a matter of fact, should we teach the norms and rules in the internet? Because there are two schools of doing that. There is not always the link between the conviction and the behavior, and the question was quite simple to junior high school students. We asked whether it should be admitted or not. Should it be permitted or not? It should be absolutely banned or absolutely allowed. Many people think that everything should be admissible in the internet. But some people think like that. And I will show you the results. Plagiarism, the control foul generation, it should be absolutely banned, 40%, or it rather should be banned, 37%. So prescriptively, they say that that it should not be allowed. Of course, the question was much more complicated. This is just an extract of that. Using the pirated software. What are the results? Half of the respondents say it should be banned. Illegal download of commercial content. So movies and other materials, quite a good percentage. 4 of 10, it should be banned. Why should we know about it? We are teaching certain rules because we believe that they don't have these rules, and I think it is better to diagnose before we act. Harassment and threatening, it is not acceptable. It is not acceptable at the level of declaration. Disclosing private correspondence, so that I will show who was writing with me. Here, quite clearly, they declare that it should be banned. 8 of every 10 persons. Introducing as someone else, more than 80% should be banned. False information on gender and age. 60% would say it should not be allowed, even though it is good for them because they can act under the false pretense and get something. These were people at the age of 15 from the junior high school. Writing the messages with capital letters, well, this equivalent of yelling, and 20% would say it should be banned. So at the level of declarations, they are conservatives, even though they are not perceived like that normally. Writing without Polish characters, 14% would say that it should be banned. Are they doing that? Here we had the standards, and here we have a real life. Never in the recent month and earlier. I'm not showing the third column. So plagiarism, it was the minority, only the fifth. Using the pirated software, 1/3. Illegal use of the materials, more. Harassment, less. So I'm not going to read all the results, but there is a certain clear link between what they declare and what they do. What is more condemned in declarations is done more rarely. Have the surveyed soft consequences? Generally, we can say that in case of negative actions, we can have some informal and formal consequences. If somebody commit a crime, we can call the police. He would be amended, put into the custody. If somebody did something which does not exist in the law, he would go here dressed as a diver. He would just face informal consequences. So generally speaking, young persons who are breaking the rules in the network, they can suffer informal and formal consequences. They can suffer quasi-formal consequences. So let us see what are the results. We asked whether over the recent year they have ever suffered any criticism of a moderator on a website due to their behavior. 3/4 didn't. The majority suffered one time. So this is a quasi-formal consequence. Have you been criticized by other chat user? It turns out that it happened a bit more often. It is quite important. Have the moderator removed any content of theirs? 70% didn't have such a situation, and 30% had a situation like that. Persons who were banned, a similar percentage. So they are doing bad things in the internet. And what is the consequence? First of all, when we work with teenagers, it is important to see what is most important. It is important to focus on most important things. So first learn what are the results, which rules should be attended to. So we should have an informed approach to this methodology. I think it is a good idea to do it because there are some differences. The knowledge is not sufficient, but let me say quite clearly that you cannot work like that with the teenagers, even if you work over the practical standards and rules. You cannot work by imposing the rules or norms. There is many ways, but it is a good idea to have such work methods, how to work with the rules which would appeal to some moral thought, moral thinking. It is also a good idea to instill the attitude of responding or reacting. In all the program of peer aggressions, we are using the active witnesses, and I think this is another consequence of the research. And by way of conclusion, I can say this, that I've done a lot in this business, but I don't know everything. And I have this feel that it is good to reverse it. First learn a lot and then do.